Hello, hello, and welcome back to another story time. Tonight's story is one that's been retold many times in many different ways, but that doesn't make it any less enjoyable. So I hope that you too will enjoy tonight's telling of Sleeping Beauty. I recently read a book that was another retelling of Sleeping Beauty. And although I might not be able to recommend that one, this one is one I know for sure that is plenty enjoyable because sometimes there's nothing like a classic. So feel free to relax, put down your burden, and rest here for a while as I tell you the story of Sleeping Beauty. A long time ago, in a land not much unlike this one, there lived a king and a queen, and more than anything, they yearned for a child. At last, to their great happiness, the queen gave birth to a baby girl, and all the bells in the land rang with joy. The king and queen invited all the fairies of the kingdom to a naming party just for their baby. And what a party it was! Plates and silverware of pure gold were set for each guest. One fairy, whose name was Maleficent, had left 50 years before and had not been seen in a very long time. And yet, Maleficent appeared at the foot of the throne, in front of the king and queen. Quickly, the king and queen whispered to the servants they must quickly find a place setting and make room for their new guest. Alas, all the gold plates were already on the table, and only a plateware setting made of silver could be found. This greatly angered Maleficent. Soon, it was time for each fairy to give her blessing to the baby. But when it came to Maleficent's turn, she stood up and pointed a long, scraggly finger at the sleeping girl in the cradle. I declare, for all of you, Maleficent called out, that on her 16th birthday, this child shall prick her finger on the spindle of a spinning wheel and die. With a whoosh of smoke, the evil fairy vanished. Everyone cried out with alarm, but one fairy had not yet given the baby her blessing. The king and queen begged this fairy, whose name was Merryweather, to reverse the curse. Merryweather shook her head sadly. She could not do that. However, she could soften the curse. On her 16th birthday, said Merryweather, when the princess pricks her finger on the spinning wheel, she will not die. Instead, she will fall asleep for 100 years. She must never prick her finger on the spinning wheel, said the queen. We will do everything we can to protect our daughter, said the king. And so, the queen and king ordered every spinning wheel in the kingdom to be brought to the palace and burned. And to be extra sure the princess would not be anywhere near a spinning wheel on her 16th birthday, they ordered Merryweather, along with two other fairies, Flora and Fauna, to take her far away to the forest. The fairies would raise the child in a cottage deep in the woods. They would keep her safe until after her 16th birthday, and then they would bring the princess, who had been named Aurora, back to the castle. Aurora grew up knowing no other friends than the three fairies, whom she believed were her aunts. The animals of the forest were her friends and companions. The birds and the deer, the chipmunks and the rabbits, all followed her around as she fed them treats from her palms. From the time she was little, Aurora had been told that she must stay inside the hills that surrounded the cottage. She could never go beyond those hills, and that was fine by her. The woods surrounded the cottage and had plenty of room for her to play. One day, when Aurora came home, she found her three aunts preparing for a party. "What's going on?" she said. "Tonight we celebrate your 16th birthday," said Flora. "My 16th birthday is tonight?" said Aurora. "That means I'll go back to the castle." "Yes, you will," said Merryweather. "We've kept you safe from that spinning wheel for 16 years. Starting tomorrow, you'll finally get to live a proper life as a princess." "And the first thing is that you will get married," said Fauna. "Married?" said Aurora. "Who am I supposed to marry?" "No need to worry about that," said Fauna with a wave of her hand. "Even if he's a bit strange or even on the horrid side, it hardly matters." "He comes from a fine family," said Flora with a quick smile. "What do you mean?" asked Aurora. "On the horrid side?" "It's best not to focus on such things, dear," said Merryweather. "I won't need to spend You won't need to spend much time with him after all." "Just do whatever your husband tells you to do," said Flora, "and you'll be fine." "This is not turning out like I thought," said Aurora. "How long do I stay married?" "Your whole life," said Fauna. "No, this is all wrong." Aurora turned to her three aunts and said in a firm voice, "I would rather prick my finger on a spinning wheel and fall asleep for 100 years than marry someone I do not know. Maybe by the time I wake up, things will be different and I won't have to get married this way." And she ran out the door. "Dear me," Merryweather said to the two other fairies. "I don't think that went very well." Aurora ran into the woods where her animal friends lived. A deer hopped over to her, along with the rabbits and chipmunks. "We have to get out of here," she said, pointing to the forbidden hills. "We'll go over those hills. I must find a spinning wheel, and quickly too. I must prick my finger and fall asleep for 100 years." Aurora and her animal friends marched through the hills. On the other side, she looked around. The world was much like the world closer to her cottage. However, one thing was different. In front of her was a road, and in the distance she heard clopping and saw a cloud of dust. It was a carriage coming their way. As the rider approached, her animal friends scattered. "Hail," said the stranger. "I'm afraid my carriage scared away your pets. May I give you a lift? Are you in need of some assistance?" Aurora had never seen a man before, but she couldn't think about that. Unless she could find a spinning wheel, her aunts with their magic could find her and whisk her back to the palace where she'd have to marry that horrid, horrid prince. "Actually," Aurora said slowly to the stranger, "there is something that I need." "What's that?" said the stranger, hopping out of the carriage. Very nicely dressed he was, and well-mannered too. "A spinning wheel," said Aurora. "A spinning wheel," said the stranger, "but there are none left in the land. Everyone knows that." "Well, you see," said Aurora, rubbing her hands together, "I have this friend, and she needs to find a spinning wheel right away, too." Aurora looked directly at the stranger and said, "It's terribly important." The stranger returned her gaze, and he said in a low voice, I may know of one, but this must stay between you and I. Rover nodded. It came to burn all the spinning wheels. She could not bear to let it go. After all, the spinning wheel had been in her family for generations. The stranger pointed down the road. She knew I'm a prince from the kingdom down that way, and she begged me to store it safely for her. I put it in my attic in the room of my castle tower. No one ever goes there. Once the 16 years are over and Princess Aurora returns, I intend to return it to her. Will you take me to your castle tower? Said Aurora. I shouldn't, said the prince. But after a moment he added, All right, I suppose I will. When they arrived at the castle tower, they both stepped out of the carriage, and the prince said, You're not doing this for your friend, are you? Thank you for taking me here, said Aurora in a firm voice. I will remember your kindness. Now, if you please, I must do what I have to do. Aurora turned, climbing the winding tower staircase up to the very last stair at the very top. There was a wooden door in front of her, and it creaked open. Inside, all was dark and musty. Aurora could barely see in front of her for all the spider webs, but she pushed the spider webs aside and stepped forward. There, in the middle of the room, was a spinning wheel. From the rose-colored light coming through the small attic window, she could tell the sun was setting. I hope this works, she said, before it's too late. Aurora held out her finger on the tip of the spindle. One pick, one prick, and a tiny droplet of blood dripped from her finger. At once, Aurora felt dizzy and fell onto an old dusty velvet blanket on the floor. She fell into a deep sleep, and moments later, everyone else in the castle, servants and royals alike, fell asleep too. So did the prince, who was still waiting for her outside of the door. Almost immediately, thorns sprung from every which way and wrapped up the castle so quickly that no human nor animal could pass through. For 100 years, Aurora and the others slept soundly in the castle. But the prince awoke from his deep slumber, and in doing so, he began to unravel the curse. Sensing a disturbance in her magic, Maleficent rose and appeared before the prince. If the girl sleeps, you will live, she said to him. But if she wakes, you will die. The prince did not appear afraid of the woman before him. And who are you to decide the fate of all of these people? I am Maleficent, she roared. I am the strongest fairy to have ever lived in these lands, and if you do not listen to me, you will sorely regret it. But the prince wasn't scared, not even when green flames shot from underneath her arms. You will release the princess from her slumber, and everyone else in this castle too. Ha 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 ha, laughed Maleficent. You think you, a puny, foolish mortal, could defeat me, the strongest fairy in these lands? The prince contemplated. What if he couldn't do it? What if he failed and everyone stayed asleep? The prince felt something deep in his heart from the moment he had laid eyes on Princess Aurora, and he knew he could not let her sleep. I will defeat you, said the prince, unsheathing his sword with a shing and with a great cry. ran towards Maleficent, stabbing her in the heart. But to his surprise, Maleficent did not die. Instead, she was swallowed by green flames, which rose higher and higher until her body was consumed completely. Maleficent, once previously a fairy, was now a great dragon. You cannot kill me with your puny sword, she roared into the air, and the prince trembled. Appearing by his side were three small fairies. We know how to help, said Flora. Yes, but you might get injured, said Fauna. Oh, hush, you two. Don't tell him that. You'll make him scared, said Merryweather. Follow us. The prince followed them through a narrow path in the bramble, finding a small outcropping in which he could hide. How do I defeat her? He asked, desperate. There's only one way. You must use the bramble thorns to pierce her heart. But I already pierced her heart with my sword, and she did not die, said the prince. That was not her true heart, said Merryweather. For she is a dragon, and her true heart can only be pierced as a dragon. How am I going to pierce that with no weapon? The prince asked, frantic and scared. You're a smart boy, said Fauna. I'm sure you could figure it out, said Flora. The prince looked around, trying to figure how he could use the bramble to his advantage. And then he realized and came up with the perfect plan. The prince ran out from his outcropping in the bramble, returning to where the dragon Maleficent stood, ready to pierce his flesh with her magnificent teeth. There you are, she crowed. Dragon, face me, yelled the prince, and face him she did. Maleficent took a deep breath in and blowed out a great roar of fire. Flames seemed to consume all, forcing the prince against the tower. And up, up, up he climbed, using the brambles to get to the top of the tower in which Princess Aurora lay sleeping. Maleficent, not to be outdone, followed him up the tower. You dragon! I've tricked you, yelled the prince. For when he reached the top, there was only a narrow ledge that the dragon could not grasp. What do you mean, tricked me? Said Maleficent. I've cornered you exactly where I want you. Oh, have you? Asked the prince, standing on a narrow ledge. Maleficent swiped with her great talons at the prince, who easily dodged her massive hand. And when she did that, her grip became unsteady. Uh-oh, Maleficent realized. She couldn't grasp the edge of the tower again. She tried with her other hand, but her massive claws could not grip the tiny ledge. And down, down, down she fell, straight into the bramble, which pierced her heart. Maleficent disappeared in a puff of green flame, and slowly The bramble, which had covered all, receded bit by bit, and the people, both noble and royal, and common alike, awoke from their slumber, all save for Princess Aurora, who was sleeping soundly in the top of the tower. The prince, who shimmied in through the window, cried over her sleeping body. "It's not fair," he yelled. "Everyone but the princess awoke. Why, oh, why won't Princess Aurora open her eyes?" "There might be one way." Meriwether came forward as the room began to fill with anxious royals. "Yes, there is one way," Flora said excitedly. "Oh, I know," tittered Fauna. "Shush," Meriwether snapped. She turned towards the prince. "Your Highness, the only way to wake the princess from this slumber is with true love's kiss. But how will I know if she loves me?" asked the prince, who realized that he did indeed love Sleeping Beauty. "Your heart will know, and her heart will know," said Meriwether. And so the prince leaned over and gently kissed Sleeping Beauty on the lips. The room had become quiet. It seemed that everyone was holding their breaths. At first, nothing happened, but then Princess Aurora began to rise from her sleep. She blinked her blue eyes open and looked around the room with some confusion. "What am I doing here?" she asked, unable to recall the spinning wheel. "You were under a curse," said the prince. Princess Aurora tilted her head to look up at him. "Aren't you the prince that helped me?" Yes, yes, I was," he replied eagerly. "You're nothing like I imagined. You're not horrid at all." The room burst into laughter with relief and happy tears, for the Princess Aurora had awoken from her long slumber. The prince and princess took their time getting to know one another, taking long strolls through the gardens and having many, many conversations before the prince at last proposed. No, he was not horrid at all, Princess Aurora had decided, and marriage sounded quite good. The prince and the princess married and soon became the new king and queen, and they lived happily ever after. Well, this might have been a somewhat unusual telling of Sleeping Beauty. I hope that you did enjoy it. And now, just like the princess of this story, I hope you too will sleep soundly, but maybe not for as long, because I hope you do wake up for many, many tomorrows. If you enjoyed this, please consider letting me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification so you can be updated when the next story is published. So you can be notified when the next story is published. But for now, good night, good night, and goodbye. Until next time.